the engagement of the leader has a relationship with the engagement of the people, because the people need constant reaffirmation through visualization, through the senses, seeing the values, seeing the buy-in, feeling and touching what it is they're a part of, for meaning to happen, for the work to be meaningful beyond the self-interest of the individual that's has their own personal life interests. How my personal life vision fits into the company that I'm a part of has a relationship with how the people that I work with show up, which has a relationship with how the ownership of the organization shows up.
Happy birthday to you.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to No Half Cakes Podcast. My name is Jim Sabellico, and I am honored to have you here with me today. Today is one of my favorite types of episodes. It is our Wednesday long-form version of the show, which if you're new here, that is where I'll sit down with a guest, someone who's done a thing or two in life. We'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, lessons learned along the way. And it's just a real raw conversation, and some of my absolute favorites, some real gems come from these. So I know today's guest specifically, you are in store for a good one. If you are new, just a quick rundown on Saturdays. I have what's called a strategy sprinkle, which is meant to be a short, practical, tactical tip to help you level up in your personal or professional life. And Mondays, I do an episode called Mindset Monday, another short form episode, just 5-10 minutes, meant to give you a positive perspective to help carry you through the week. But today, without further ado, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, someone I've had the pleasure of doing business with for a little while. This man is an expert on culture, one of the most well-read, well-versed, just all-around awesome dudes I've ever had the pleasure of doing business with and just doing life with, Mr. J. Duran.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm excited to eat some cake with you.
Me too, brother. Me too. And I also want to thank you for making the time to be here. I know this was short notice, but had the opportunity to have this conversation. I said, yeah, let's do it. Like right away, it's got to happen. So thank you for that.
Last night, right? Hey, why not? Let's try tomorrow. And you're like, boom, here's a time. I love that. I think there's something to take away right there just for my former self, when I needed more chutzpah 10 years ago, I'd say. It would have been, you would have been a good guy in my corner, I think.
Thank you. Well, glad to be in your corner and have you in mind. Speaking of the 10-year ago version of yourself, I'd love to understand a little bit more about how we got here and how you got to be, an expert on culture and kind of your journey to this point so far.
Yeah, well, I think I wasn't acutely aware of it at the time, but the pursuit came from a lack. Seeking culture. I remember in the very beginning of the pursuit of trying to figure out what culture is, and if we had it in our organization, it was when I had picked up a book that had talked about its values, the company's values, what it stood for, and attributed the success of not just the bottom line and the growth of the company, but the low turnover rate and the quality employee engagement and the per capita, like the average income of the employees being higher than that industry's market average. It was a book that it was called Uncontainable, actually, if anyone's interested. And Kip Tyndall talked about the Container Store's mission to help people get more organized in 1978. And I was walking in Barnes & Noble and dazed and confused, trying to make meaning in my life, the pursuing success with in a business with a partner, and Barnes & Noble is where I'd end up when I was stressed out, unclear, and looking for answers. And that book popped out in my periphery, just kind of stuck out. And I look at the table contents, or before the table contents, on the left-hand side, the leaf, and it said most of what I just said. And I asked myself, What are our values? What do we stand for? And read that, tore through that book. And it was in the realization that I didn't know what we stood for, and the reflection and the codification to try to come up with those principles, and then the revealing of them to the team, that I found I stumbled upon my calling, which would be teaching, addressing a group of uninterested students and meeting them where they are. And all things that I've been given from my family and my culture and people that I've been blessed with throughout my life, not realized at the time, but it was an opportunity to be that teacher and to get everyone around our values. That, like, so for at the time, the first value was the first 3 steps. When the customer walks through the door, they get greeted with a warm, hearty hello. The experience starts at the door and ends with a goodbye. And I would live that, like I would do that. Hey, good morning, go ahead. And in the mixture of that and the gatherings, or we would talk about them, and I was able to get through the resistance. That's a sidebar conversation in the beginning. Noticing the behavioral change inspired me. It gave me purpose, like I had meaning. And that's where I think I found my calling, before I even realized I found my calling. And that's where the idea came that culture mattered. But it was in the absence of culture, like, you have to define culture. It's, I think, more than just how people behave and the ritualization of people. It's something deep and exploratory. And when you say expert, I think, fool. The more that I study culture, the more foolish I feel. But so that's the very beginning. It was like the right place, the right time, into the right amount of stress, the right opportunity, having had the right tutelage from everything, how I was raised and or wasn't, and presenting this idea that culture, like the values, were important to the team, getting that resistance, working through it, and seeing the fruits. I think before now I'm more clear on it. It was like, that's my calling. I'm going to be a teacher.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, the initial transition period where, someone goes from not being aware of that, whether it's you in your own company, when you first sort of stepped into that and sort of uncovered your own company culture and sort of started rolling that out, or even for someone you work with, when you start the process of discovering what that looks like and sort of putting it into bedrock.
There's some learning lessons here, because first of all, it wasn't my company. I was a participant in it. It was the visionary, it was the founder's company. I was a co-founder. And one of the lessons that, had I known today, that would have been something that we had done together as one, almost like a marriage, partners. It would have not have been something that I had just, like the wind, run through like a storm, and all of a sudden, this is the way things got to be. Now, ironically, that's one of the most, I think, admirable qualities of why I was in that opportunity in the first place, to help found something, right? The spirit. But additionally to that, there are consequences. There are consequences to not listening well enough, to not asking enough questions, to not knowing what no idea. So no, that was, I was a participant in the creation of something, and like a majority minority, and that's a lesson in of itself. If one's going to do this and do something of that nature, include those that, and I would go even farther to say, don't just include those that, let's say, are the operational management. Go so far to include the people too. and be as democratic as one can, as inclusive as one can in constructing what the company stands for in the inception of that, like when that process starts to occur, whether that's at like 20 employees or whether that's 3 or 5 or whether that's 500. The value of values is the dialogue around them and the feedback loops of where am I failing? How could I be better?
So let me ask you a question on that, because I'm looking to draw a parallel here between doing this in a business and doing this in a family. And because I think that there's a tremendous amount of parallels already between business structure, family structure, the way that a boss would lead their employees compared to a parent to their kids. I think there's a lot of similarities you can draw between those. And what I'm looking at too is if you're looking to create or establish or uncover the core values and the culture of your family, is that something that is just dictated by 1 or 2 parents, or is that a conversation that evolves with the parents and their 7 and 10-year-old kids? Right, that becomes sort of what you're saying here is it's built by the group.
It's let's say if I'm Napoleon and I'm formulating a strategy, how I bring my generals into it will increase or decrease its effectiveness relative to are they the right bench? Now, I'm not choosing my bench as it relates to children, but they are me. So from the nature standpoint, we have that checked. So that it's not like I'm playing basketball with someone that's 4'2", and they're not going to be able to play the game. So that's checked. So then it becomes an environmental. How are we communicating with one another? So to answer your question, it's a little bit of both and that's where individuals like myself come in as facilitators of that process. External, third parties that can create safety and help those conversations take place in effective ways. Not to say that that's an absolute. Before there were people that helped in those ways, families figured out how to do it in the absence of that. But that's where that becomes a helpful additive because of the emotionality of something like that. It's very close. That's not something that in a family context, we're just going home to, we're checking out of work and we're going home to family. It's, there is no out. It's just that's an inescapable reality. There's opportunities in that. You really are forced to grow. I can't just blame my company or the company may not just be able to get rid of me so easily. I'm like, we're forced to grow. So to answer your question, I think it's, someone is going to bring that to the table. It could be someone in the generations is going to bring that to the table. It can be, I've seen scenarios of, any one of the generations bringing that conversation to the table. It's really how that conversation takes place that will increase or decrease the effectiveness of it. So that ultimately, if everyone agrees, like truly, not just to agree, to avoid the anxieties that come with truth, but truly agrees that this is what we stand for based on the past. Because if you're talking about that, we're going into the past of a family, into history, into the stories that came before that. We're not creating it. We're actually researching and bringing out the past to understand how we want to move forward. If you can get consensus that there's a process to do that, and that's like the first step, and consensus is important. Then this is the interesting thing about that, and this goes in companies too. The dialogue around consensus is what reveals it, like almost like they pop up out of the ground, things that we just have been wanting to talk about. Problems that are inevitable that have to be addressed. They pop up in the dialogue. So what I found is more important than just, what a value is. and what it says is the fact that we're attempting to discover it together. We might be able to learn more about one another of what we see as valuable and what we see it can improve in ourselves and in our team, in ourselves and in our family. And it's the pursuit of understanding what we stand for and what we don't that helps us work through the past and move into the future. It's a process, and the inclusion and the safety and the candor and all and the fact that it's actually a pursuit and an interest is more important, I believe, than who brings it up. And I guess maybe a simple retort to your question was like top down hammer. I'll use myself as an example. Like when I first brought the idea of what we stood for in an organization to the table. All right, this is what this is what I read. This is how I was inspired. This is what I think we stand for. And one of the employees raised their hand and was like, I'll leave his name out. Just I consider him a friend. Mark said, "Hey, this is really stupid. Really waste of time." I'm paraphrasing. It was a little more explicit, and that's how I remember it. It could be just how I felt, and I don't know why. I mean, I could philosophize on why, but my instant response was like, "Hey, I get that. Like, that makes sense." I don't even fully want to take credit for that response because I think I've just been, like I said, like a philosophizer. Why was I so kind to this person? They were unkind, and I was insecure of how I brought up my idea, and they challenged it, and I felt shame with that because I put all this work into this. But I just was like, hey, that makes sense to me. Can I have an opportunity to share these over the next few days, and we can have conversations around it? And they gave me that opportunity. In hindsight, I think it's because I didn't disrespect them, and I was kind, and I was open, and I agreed with them. Like, if I was in their seat, I think it would be stupid for us to be talking about this right now. So what happened was we continued to have the conversations and including the team, and that person became, one of the most a leader. Clearly they were a leader. That's why they were challenging me. They were the leader. And whether they felt safe or not, they were strong. They challenged me. And then I think how I handled it created the safety for them to help me improve it and to help me grow as a leader. So there's an interplay, is the point, between the person in a position of authority and the individual with less less authority. They may have influence, but less authority. And the person that has authority may not have any influence. So much so that the person in my seat in that case would have to use force. Like, we're just going to do this. Shut up, or leave. Don't come back till you're ready to be a part of the fact. The irony of that, like, we're values. So I'm not going to live any of the values. I'm just going to, only live them if you live them.
There is probably a place where that by force rule has to come in, right? When you've got some people on a team that are just cancerous to the environment, you can't necessarily let the inmates run the operation. I think that's probably 2% of the the time it ever happens. It seems to me that it gets blown out of proportion, where a lot of people look at, hey, you got to be this dictator and rule with an iron fist, rather than be a servant leader where you can make everyone feel loved, appreciated, seen, and heard, help them to be part of the process. You still need to come in there and help mold it and guide it and shape it, but do so in a way that lets other people be involved. And I think that's a pretty nuanced approach that I think is fair to say takes some time to develop.
Jim, I mean, you're tapping into something. I wrote this down. You said you can't let the inmates run the prison. I mean, you're tapping into, it's all contradiction, and it nuances everything because, and I think this is where character comes in, because there's an interplay. Like, for example, if I let my team down because I don't respond in the highest, that's where I'm gonna have, apologies come in. You know, I don't have to save face. I'm gonna mistakes are gonna be made. If I'm showing up at the highest, because I want to talk about engagement for a second, because the engagement of the leader has a relationship with the engagement of the people, because the people need constant reaffirmation through visualization, through the senses, seeing the values, seeing the buy-in, feeling and touching what it is they're a part of, for meaning to happen, for the work to be meaningful beyond the self-interest of the individual that's has their own personal life interests, right? I'm employed with an organization. I have my own personal life interests, a vision of, even if it's not written out and there's a vision board, a vision of where I'd like to go in my personal life at some level. And oh, that's what it is. My freaking phone is playing a music song. Sorry, it's driving me nuts. And how my personal life vision and mission and what, and fits into the company that I'm a part of has a relationship with how the people that I work with show up, which has a relationship with how the ownership of the organization shows up, which has a relationship with the degrees of conflict. There's more things that we're going to have to talk about if we don't believe in the people that we work for and with. Because below our awareness, we're going to be working harder and more engaged in a relationship with how hard and engaged those that benefit greatest from the organization work and are engaged. There's a real relationship there, because when those lights go out at nighttime, the bill is still running. The money is worth less. The competitors may be still up. The consumer is Peter Drucker, the purpose of a business is to create a customer. The consumer is, we are consumers. We're looking for what helps our life. There's pressure. There's pressure. And so that pressure, it's like the myth of Sisyphus. The boulder, I'm pushing the boulder up the mountain, and it gets to the top, and then it start all over at the bottom. Somebody has to carry that boulder. When the ownership are not carrying that boulder at the degree that is part of the job description, the people suffer more. The people suffer more. That the rock is distributed evenly. And that creates more reactivity, more emotion. A guilty leader is going to respond less like a servant and more like a tyrant, is where I'm going. But the contradictions are, they're forever. So for example, I'm fully engaged. I'm all about it. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm making the big sacrifices. I'm the founder. I want to be a chief. I'm building my bench. I'm putting it all on the table. I'm doing the best I can at home at this, I'm doing it. I don't control the things that go on in the people's lives that I employ, and how the randomness of the universe, what meaning no matter what I do, there's going to be people that want to leave, people that want to pursue their dreams and their passions, people that are going to cause chaos just because they can't. It's how I confront those obstacles that's going to reveal the value of the values of the company. It's going to reveal what our culture really is. So we contrast, there are certain countries where if you leave the company, if you leave the country, they kill your family. There are other countries where if you leave the country, nobody cares. It's all good. Like, go, come back whenever you want. You have a passport. Two different ways to run a company. Two different types of leadership. Different value. I mean, it took me all that just to get there, like that. Like two different ways to govern the business. And I just asked myself, which company do I want to be a part of? Which client do I want to serve? How can I serve them? What country do I want to be a part of? What country do I want to create? What company do I want to create? And it's so engagement is a big piece, I believe, with the productivity of the people. And in business culture today, I think that we are, well, the landscape's changing, right? The interests are changing, and and for good in a lot of the ways, right? With awareness comes different values. However, we still have to work. So that was a long-winded way to say, yeah, you can't let the inmates run the prison. It's just, innocent before proven guilty. That would be my retort to that. It's like, or is it guilty before proven innocent? If I'm a disengaged, guilty leader that's not been really living up, my mind's going to play tricks on me. My job as an advisor to try to remind them that they have all the control and all the power. And that's going to set the tone of the organization. And so like to try to be a feedback loop where there's limited or no accountability. That's just kind of wrap a bow on that.
Yeah, because I've seen scenarios, I'm sure you've seen this as well, where you get a team member, employee, or kid, either one could work in this scenario, who has this built-in fear of getting in trouble or letting their boss down. And even though the boss, on the surface level, at least, I'm sure there's something somewhere below the surface that causes this, but hasn't done anything to instill this fear, right? The boss may feel like, what have I done wrong? Or what have I done to give you the impression that you can't talk to me? Right? I try and say, hey, my door's open. I'm approachable. Come talk to me, whenever you want. You're not going to get in trouble. I want feedback. I want your honest opinion. I want you to be involved. But the person on the other end has this built-in fear. It could be from other areas of their life, could be from a whole bunch of different things. But they have this built-in block that prevents them from doing that. And they are constantly feeling like they're going to get in trouble. They're going to get yelled at. They're going to disappoint somebody. And it causes this rift where that person always feels like they're wrong. No matter what they do, they look at it from the perspective of, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm not good enough. And then it causes chaos in the leader who starts to feel like, man, what am I doing wrong to give this perspective? I'm trying everything I can. Either I'm crazy or this employee sucks, right? So I see this scenario happen a lot, honestly, in relationships as much as I see it in companies. And I'm just curious your take on, like, if you've seen that, right, and where you start with trying to unpack that.
Well, and this is a conversation that brings me to the distinction between responsibility and accountability, which I believe gets confused. It can be easily confused. Responsibility is modeled it's it's the senses, the five senses. So an irresponsible leader is not present in their organization. That could be time and space and psychical. Responsibility is modeled. That's why cultures gather. That's why team meetings that are not excelling at the highest level reveal leadership struggles. So that's one piece. Responsibility is modeled. Values are acted out. Monkey see, monkey do. I'm trying to retire that saying. I think it just doesn't seem. It's like seems politically incorrect. If you can have any other ideas, if I could say that, I'd be open. But like John Maxwell, law of the picture. People do what people see. Accountability is given or taken. It's given in speech. I don't see you doing what you said you were going to do. Or I think I'm living this value in this way. I don't see you living that value in that way. Do you see that? Like basically telling the truth it creates accountability. Also force. I can quit my company if they're letting me down. However, I only have one income source maybe. So this is where it becomes a power conversation. I could just quit my company. I've got kids to feed. I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. Like that's a scary prospect. Let me just repress everything and show up and do my job. That's where the trust starts to decay. They're just doing what they got to do. Accountability, force, right? Given or taken. If I'm the company, or I'm the superior, and not the superior to the subordinate. And I've said what I think to them. And I am open because I've been able to receive feedback from my subordinates. Like we've had real conversations of where they could see me improve. I can see them improve. The people around me, I actually have like feedback loops that I need improvement. That's where there's mentors, there's peers, there's subordinates. Those loops are all intact. And I'm working with a subordinate, and we've given them the chances that in our culture, that's the chances they get. Accountability is given or taken. Force would be, this is the end of our working relationship. It's how that graduation, firing, it's interesting to me that I haven't done the research to like look historically. So now that I'm thinking about it, it's something I really must do for the new book. Where did this idea of firing come from? Did it come from the witch trials? Because I see that a lot in couples. Like the alliteration of firing someone. We fired people throughout the medieval ages. I think that stopped in the mid 1700s. We stopped firing people. We, put them on the stake and burned them alive. That's the literary, how we fire people reveals our values. In the absence of doing it, we're not being responsible leaders. Like management, if it's a subordinate, we're not doing our job. We're going to have to do more. We're going to have to do more of and that's where these get mixed up and twisted. There's a relationship between responsibility and accountability, because responsibility is a reflection of the individual and how engaged they are, what they know they don't know, what they don't know they don't know, which has a relationship with how they're experiencing their work life. Accountability is given or taken. It's given through speech and taken through force. An employee can quit. An employee can just spend all their time gossiping and building influence because they need to put the energy somewhere. They may not be able to afford a therapist, or maybe they have one and it's not enough. The employer, I'm sorry, but it's an epidemic, I think, in our culture at the Main Street lower middle market, which are businesses under 100 million in revenue. I don't think people want to work anymore. I don't think we know what work even means anymore. It becomes a more cultural conversation, the addictions that we have with these these platforms and things, and where our attention really is. And a disengaged management absolutely sends everybody, cats and dogs, into hell. What are we doing? Why are we doing? How are we supposed to do things? Where are we going? My life sucks already. I need money and I need hope. I have no hope and I don't make enough money. I hate my life. Now I start taking it out on my family. Now the company's destroying people's families, all because the people that started the damn thing weren't bought in. So keep in mind, my bias is my field of expertise. I specifically work with founders, CEOs, and helping founders mature into CEOs, helping families transition to generation. Founders, CEOs, that's my thesis, is based on that. It's like I'm lasered in on that. I think that's the hinge. So that's my bias for everybody. It's like if I decided to start Culture Matters, I am Culture Matters. I'm culture. I'm the founder. I'm in this. I was talking to one of my buddies this morning, Lance Bachman, wonderful man, wonderful father, wonderful business owner, friend for years, opened a lot of doors to me. I'm like, I love you. Your video on Instagram, you're talking about not going to lunch. I love it. Like, he was saying how he works harder as a business owner than when he was an employee. And that doesn't mean, that's why I like your no half cakes. It doesn't mean you have to destroy your entire existence outside of the work. It's figuring out the integration. That's the $1 million question. But lying to ourselves and then putting it all on the people, I think that's like what dictatorships do. It's so easy for me to just blame my team. It doesn't mean that they don't mess up and make mistakes. So that's where the accountability distinction with responsibility. Are we having the conversations? We've got to address it. It's not fair to my staff if I don't like them and don't see a future for them in the organization, for me to avoid talking to them about it, for me to avoid replacing them, because then I'm holding their life back. I'm destroying their life. I'm participating in the destruction of their life. And this is my point. A disengaged leader, ownership, let's say a disengaged owner that thinks they're engaged, won't even be, they're not realizing that their job is to get more people to join the mission. So while they're doing that, it's a lot easier to say, hey, this person's not working out, let's bring them there. Hey, this person's not working out, let's bring them there. Hey, let's have this conversation. So, and then of course, we're surrounded by, books and podcasts and things that are telling me I should feel shame that I work. That's like it's like an implicit narrative. I should be on a beach. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I don't have a family office yet, so no, I shouldn't be doing any of that. Yeah, I need to be, and then, we're going to talk about children and values and all these things. They're seeing how we work and how we show up, but it's not just that. Something I took, beautifully from our podcast together was just about how hard in your family line work was there and ethic was there. And I think in your history, like who you are today, you're integrating the best of the past and bringing in it's like the best of the past of the work and the awareness of your generation for your next generation, of the integration of like that hard work and communicating around those values and what's really important and modeling them at the same time. And that's what life's all about, learning from the past and investing into the future. So I just went a whole rabbit hole, but I guess, my theme has been the last few podcasts I've done about this idea of the engaged ownership. And if my belief, if I make it simple, like my belief is if the ownership is disengaged, it creates a lot of problems, not only for them, but for the company, for the culture. And it's a choice. Like, it's all in or out.
So let me ask you this. If the person listening to this right now is the employee, not the employer, and they understand that they are working in a company that lacks culture, and it feels like what we described before, they're just showing up, putting in whatever they have to do just to get their paycheck, to keep things moving. What options do you have in that scenario? For me, I feel like it's fairly limited. You can go and have an honest conversation, remove the ego and pride, not be accusatory, but go have an honest conversation with the leadership and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. There is potential here, but right now, this situation ain't it. So if we can work on that, cool. If not, then you got to find somewhere else, because it's just going to end up poorly. But I'd love to hear your take.
Thanks for the question. You're a great listener, Jim. And I love, this is very therapeutic. So thank you. Yeah, great question.
Sure.
I wrote this down. Find a leader. So I don't think entrepreneurship is, everyone has to be entrepreneurs. Maybe it's finding a leader to follow. Meaning, okay, so that was kind of where I was going. To directly answer your question, if I've had a conversation with my superior, we're not on the same page. One thing one could do is give themselves a period of time to fully commit to be the best version of of their job as possible. It's like the idea of, make your bed in the morning. Like, if I give myself a timeline, I'm gonna act out this. I'll explain why I think this is important psychologically, because no matter what happens to your company, you're you. I'm me. Like, I'm growing and learning, or I'm not. And so I could give myself 90 days. For the next 90 days, I'm going to show up despite all the things that are out of, that are out of reach for me to like change about my company. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do the best job I possibly can for my own integrity, for my own self-awareness, for my own character development. And I'm going to build a book of business to have that conversation with a leader. Maybe it's a leader I feel let down by. And I'm going to use that time to build, build that book, to be in integrity. Because the reason I think that's important, in the long run, it's important for the character piece. In the short run, it's important because it's going to cut away and clarify. And it's going to give the individual more confidence, clarity, like to show up in that conversation with less anxiety. Because I'm coming in there of the belief I don't have to prove anything. I just proved it in what I did. I had a good 90 days. I did the best I possibly could. I got up, I drank my water, I had my breakfast, I did my work. I left a little bit later, but not too late to undermine my outside world. I just put it all on the table. Maybe I track it. I think that conversation is going to be easier. Sometimes we're relegated to human resources, right? And that makes this over, that's another show.
Well, I think the answer there might really be, I guess to summarize it, personal excellence. Right? So if you carry yourself to the highest standard as possible, and you focus on being as excellent as possible and doing everything in your purview in excellence, right? First of all, it helps you sleep at night because you've done the best work possible. Second of all, I think it helps you to kind of create that culture even within yourself, because even though if you may be an employee in a subpar culture at work, you leave there and you are now the leader of your family. So if you put yourself in a situation where you are not executing in excellence all day long and you're just accepting whatever comes to you and you're just the recipient and you're not putting your own pride and your own values into what you do, right? Even if the company that you're currently in does not value what you value the same way, comes down to what you value and your own excellence and your own standards. And if you are comfortable with the fact that you are meeting and exceeding those. So I believe if you show up every day, and no matter where you are, no matter where you show up as yourself, your authentic self, and you operate in excellence in all the things that you do, that creates that own internal culture, which then, you pass into your family. Because I think that's a really tricky thing when you live, 8 hours a day in an environment that is subpar, and then you try and go right and be with your family and do the opposite. It's almost impossible.
Exactly right. And companies can learn the same thing, because the same thing goes with customers. And when we're engaged and when a company is clear on what it's doing and why, and has a plan of how, and is working towards that highest aim, it becomes more natural to live in truth. And the gap, Snoop Dogg's gap occurs. Remember, I saw this video at Snoop Dogg's gap. He's like, when you're on the rise for success, there's a gap. And some of your people, they're here and you're here. There's a gap. And it's not you to come down to them. It's them to come up to you. I use, and I want to add to that alliteration, because I think there's one piece that I'd like to add to it from a value standpoint. From a competence standpoint, from a growth standpoint, that gap might be created, and the company is reaching up, getting customers that challenge it, because both customers can outgrow companies and companies can outgrow customers, because growth is life. And as Heraclitus said, no man steps into the same river twice. It's a different man, different river. Change, flux. So that gap occurs if we're engaged, if we're involved, if we're responsible. That gap occurs. Where I'm not going to disagree with Snoop, but add to that. When the gap occurs, it doesn't mean that if I'm walking down the street and I see, the people here, I'm not avoiding them in the street. I'm going to say, what's up? How are you? Hug them, like, I'll see you at Thanksgiving. It's not, I want to be of character, to your point, internal self-culture strong enough where I can have a conversation with an old friend or an old client or whoever, and it not be void of meaning. And that comes, am I listening? Am I curious? Am I open? Am I humble? Am I a servant? Am I a leader beyond just power and position and things? So it's a values conversation. But that gap is going to happen when we're like, it's my duty as an advisor, for example, to read more, to write more, to author more books, to speak more, to evolve my brain and develop and pull as many thought leaders as possible up in their domains. It is not my job to hold on to them for dear life. It's to do exactly what you just said. Arete, personal excellence. It's to focus on that. I love that so much. And anybody that's listening to this, they're an employee. God, I don't like that in our culture today. We degrade, and maybe I'm wrong, but I sense that. It's like we degrade employees or like people that have jobs. It's like, or like it's, one should feel less than because they don't have a business or that. It's like, how about pride around the fact that one is employable and employed? Like there's books out there that say that an employee, you should think of yourself like, if you're an employee, as just over broke. That's horrifying. How about joyful, optimistic, and benevolent, charitable, like, or beneficent I was trying to read this Adam Smith book, and he keeps saying beneficent.
It's also a very small part of really who you are.
Well, that's why I love your podcast.
Right? It's what you do between the hours of 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 p.m. is just a very small part of who you are, and that can't define your entire existence. Like, and I think to what you just said, I read this quote yesterday, is that you could be seen as a giant to ants and hardly visible by trees. Like, but what matters is who you are, right? So you could be in different environments and be viewed very differently by different people, but it comes down to who you are and the core values that you have for yourself and how you uphold those standards internally. And I think the people who do the work to uncover their own core values, their own culture, their own standards for them individually will have such a better go at life, whether they are operating in the family space, in the business space, as an employer, an employee, whatever, right? Because they know who they are. They know what their own standards are. They know how they operate. And it doesn't come from ego or pride. It comes from a standard of personal excellence. It doesn't have to mean I'm better than you. This is how I vibrate. This is my frequency. This is how I operate. You're welcome to do whatever your standards are is fine. I don't have to go down to them. I don't even have to go up to them. This is my standard, right? And it's how you lead your life. And if that's the life that you want to live, by all means, go and live it. But understand what that is and go do the freaking thing, right? Don't let yourself be operating on someone else's frequency because you don't understand what yours is.
You said it's a very small part of the life. I think it is, and how we do it, how we work tests our values and instantiates them into our being that we bring into the other facets of our life. Like working, work forces me to love my neighbor because I work with non-blood. I work with people I don't agree with politically, theologically, in every way. I have different opinions on every spectrum you could imagine, and I serve them as customers. So I don't even like these people, and I'm serving them. Like, if you really think, I have such contempt for this customer. As Abraham Lincoln said, I don't like that man very much. I need to get to know him, or let me get to know him. I have contempt. The free market forces me to look past our differences and live the value of service with this person, to exchange. So the work shapes our values. It molds our values. It tests our values. It tests us for, and this is a good conversation for me because I overly extreme and hypocritical in one way, right? That season of obsession, obviously no kids yet. So I get to be narcissistic and entitled at a higher level than when I become the mentor to me, right? Basically, right? A part of me. So anyway, work forces us to break and rebuild with strangers. So, like, to your point, we're showing up, no half cakes, the best human possible to continue the species, to mentor the next generation, to be with the next generation. But this is the thing, Jim. I'm insecure. That's why I started the damn thing. I lacked resources, people, believing in me, that the head trash, there's all sorts of darkness that compels me to go through this, creation of the business. I might lose myself in the creation of the business. Damn well, I am guaranteed to lose myself. As, like I said earlier in the conversation, I am culture matters. What the hell does that even mean? Like, the work can consume and confuse and bend reality, and all of a sudden, I become the caricature that is Jay Duran, the culture man. These questions and these concepts, intrigue me. So I'm, pursue the culture conversation, study these things, try to figure them out. But ultimately, I have to be careful of who I become in the pursuit to test my values at work through customers, strangers, serving them, to hopefully become a man of community, of a belief in something bigger than myself, a parent, a partner to a wife, or whatever one's listening, husbands, people. Like, it is more than just about work, but they're related. They have a relationship that's almost indistinguishable from one another. Because, well, yeah, like when people don't work, they kind of, fizzle out. I just haven't met anyone ever yet that wasn't working towards something, like creating some type of value that was, I don't even know. I don't know. Maybe that's my own, like I said, I'm wrapped up in my own delusion of grandeur creating this business. So I don't have all the answers. It sounds like I do. I'm thinking about me talking. I've got all the answers. I am clueless. And, I'm trying to figure it out.
As we all are, man. And I think that's a lot of what this is about finding your purpose and fulfilling that purpose. And that doesn't have to mean a 9-to-5 job. For a lot of people, they substitute the 9-to-5 job for fulfilling their purpose because that's the only purpose they know, right? They haven't done the work yet to figure out what their greater purpose is. Am I working right now? Technically, I don't even know. Honestly, I don't get paid for this podcast. There's no income generated from this. It's during my 9-to-5 working hours. If someone said, "Hey, are you busy?" I'd say, "Yeah, I'm working right now. I'm recording a podcast." Is this work? I don't honestly know, but I feel I'm fulfilling a purpose. So I don't know if you want to look at like the work-life balance conversation where people end up. It's about, to me, fulfilling purpose. And I believe that when you can do that, that's so much freedom comes from that, because that's when you really get aligned with who you are, and that's where the joy comes in. And a lot of people, I think, sacrifice the greater purpose for the purpose that's in front of them. Hey, I go and I make widgets. That's my purpose. Maybe, probably not. I believe you're shortcutting yourself because you have not yet done the work to find out what your greater purpose is, because it's scary. Right? It could be scary. But I believe this is really all about finding purpose and fulfilling that purpose. So I want to ask you 2 additional questions, if I can, before we wrap up. Question number 1, if you can give one piece of advice today for someone to have a slightly better day, some actionable tip someone can implement in their day today to walk out a better day, what would that look like for you?
Call a loved one, which means that I just realized I need to call my mother. Yeah, say hi to Barbara. That's one piece of advice.
I love that. I probably will do that when we're done here too. Question number 2, this would not be the No Have Cakes podcast if I didn't mention cake at least once. So I want to ask, what would your favorite cake or dessert or even meal, if it's not cake, but what's your favorite cake? And is there a core memory attached to that?
Well, even just this birthday, my wife, I didn't celebrate my birthday. In fact, I didn't celebrate my birthday. There's an excerpt in 30 Days of Thought, which was my first book, actually called Happy Birthday, where I just try to refute the whole idea of birthdays. I'm laughing because at Kierkegaard say, what if everything in life was a misunderstanding and laughter were really tears? That's how sad I was when I was writing that. And so since having met Jenna and her love coming into my life and, coaching me and, helping me open up, we've been having birthdays. Like, I remember my 27th birthday, she got me like almost all of Friedrich Nietzsche's books, and like I like how he writes, and there was a cake involved in somewhere in there. But the first one that comes to mind is the most recent one for my recent birthday, July 9th. If anybody wants to send me books, they can do that every year. Yeah, I'm selfish. My 33rd birthday, everyone is getting together, and I'm sorry, I don't want to do this. I don't like this idea. Like, it makes me uncomfortable. But everyone was like disagree about when to blow the candles out. Like, do we do it at the beginning or the end or something like that? And all of a sudden, I just started going, Jay, Jay, Jay. Jay, and everyone started chanting Jay. It's crazy. It didn't make any sense. And we can unpack this with a psychologist, but like that was special because everybody who was chanting was like, okay, I have this reminder there are people there for me that love me, care about me. They'd go out of their way to have a birthday. And maybe at some degree, I was like trying to, you know, tell myself that. Like I say, Jay, Jay, and then everybody started chanting Jay. It was like, it was wonderful. So there you go. That's a cake story. And then we ate some cake. I don't know, ice cream cake. So thanks for the question.
Love it. Oh, well.
Dude, this is definitely a gift of yours too, by the way. And I want to say, like, from a work standpoint, you're an you influence people. You're a teacher, you're an advisor, you help companies, and you doing a podcast with me helped me today, and you doing podcasts. I mean, you're building your culture, right? So that is, it's better. It's meaningful work for you. I think that's what I would say. You're doing meaningful work, building your culture, and helping all the people that are listening and your clients.
I appreciate that. That's definitely the goal. I want, and these conversations that are, these conversations which are very obviously unscripted and just real raw conversations between two people who've done some stuff, who've learned some lessons, who've been through some struggles, are really meant for that, to just help people experience life and hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls and live a better life. And, I've shared a lot about the version of me that I was, pre 2019 and all the struggles I went through and the perspectives I had and the lessons I've learned since then and continue to learn. And for me, I believe if I can help one person have a slightly better day, I've done my job. And each day I just look to hit one person and help them live a better life. And I'm hoping that eventually that will start multiplying out and do this thing, rising tide lifts all boats. Right? It's a core life principle for me. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to just reach one person, get them to live a better day. And sometimes that person could even be me, could be you.
Oh, yeah. I'm calling my mother. I wasn't going to call her. I would call her on Sunday.
All right. Call her a day.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir.